All right, so kind of a quick little video today. It's a little more informal than what I usually do, but I want to talk about how reliable these things really are. All right, so when the Z6 and the Z7 came out, one of the biggest complaints that people had was that it just had one card slot. Now, a lot of people, myself included, weren't really concerned about that, and one of the major responses was, well, yeah, it's only one card slot, but it's an XQD card slot, and these things are fast and they're really reliable. So why would you need two card slots? Well, the fact is, these things can fail. And in fact, I experienced my own XQD card failure just the other day while I was filming my previous video on the D500. As you can see, if you've ever looked at one of these things, all of the electronics and the contacts are all internal. It's all well protected. It's got this little aluminum, I guess, plate over it and hard plastic casing around it to protect the card, and they are pretty durable. They're stiff, they're hard to break, and there's not much issue with data loss on them. Although it can happen, it's not as common as with the more traditional SD cards. But while I was filming my video the other day, I went to pop the card out of my Z6, and as I popped the card out, I fumbled it a little bit with my fingers, and it dropped to the floor. Now, it dropped from a height of maybe 4 feet onto the floor, so I didn't really think anything of it. These things are supposed to be rugged, right? They're supposed to be durable. So I picked it up just with a quick glance, popped it in my card reader, and started transferring the video onto the computer. There was no data loss. Everything was there. Everything transferred fine. All of the files were good. But when I went to pop the card out of the card reader, when I pushed in and let go, it just barely popped out. I mean, it should have come out like another 1/4 of an inch. So it was very difficult to get a hold of. So I pushed it back in to reseat it, and I pressed it again to pop it out. Same thing. It just barely came out. So, I struggled, trying to get my fingers on it, and I finally got a hold of it and was able to slide it out, but I felt a little catch as it was coming out. And I thought, well, that's strange. So I took a closer look at the card, and I don't know if you can see this. I'll try and zoom in on it as much as I can. But right up here, there's a little chip missing from the hard plastic case around the XQD card. Now, one of the things that is a trade-off in plastics is if you make it hard and thin, it's going to be brittle. And what happened is when this dropped to the floor, it broke and a little chip came out of it. And now, as I look closely at it, when I rub my finger over that, I can feel a little bit of an edge. I can feel that it's just slightly misshapen. And honestly, I'm not even sure if what I'm feeling is the plastic or if it's this little metal plate that maybe got deformed a little bit. But just that tiny variation was enough to cause this thing to catch and hang up in the release mechanism of the card reader. Now, the release mechanisms in our cameras are very similar to the ones in the card readers. So there was no way that I was going to put this thing back inside my Z6 knowing that it has this problem. Because, honestly, if the card gets stuck in the card reader, big deal, right? I mean, just get a new card reader and a new card and move on. All the data was there, nothing was lost. But if I were to put this back in my Z6 and it were to pop out the same way that it popped out on my card reader, there's no way that I would be able to get a hold of it to pull it the rest of the way out of the camera. I mean, possibly with a pair of needle nose pliers or something, I could get a hold of it, but at that point, that's a pretty scary operation. When you're sticking needle nose pliers into a $2,000 camera, nobody wants to do that. This card is trash. I'm not using it ever again. I'm not putting it in one of my cameras. Interestingly enough, this particular failure probably wouldn't affect a professional shooter very much. If somebody's out on a paid shoot or shooting an event and this were to happen, no big deal, because pros always carry multiple cards with them. They always have more cards. This kind of issue actually can affect the amateur more than it could affect the professional. What if I had gone on a trip? What if I was on like the trip of a lifetime to shoot wildlife in Wyoming or, landscapes somewhere, and had really looked forward and anticipated this trip? not being a professional photographer, it might not occur to me to take multiple cards with me in case something like this were to happen. So maybe on the second day of the trip, I drop this thing on a rock, it cracks like that, and boom, all of a sudden, I'm out of luck. I can't take any pictures because of the way this particular card failed. It fell only a distance of about 4 feet. Now, in all fairness, it did fall on a floor that is, it's vinyl plank over a concrete subfloor, so it is a very hard surface. But it landed in just the right way that the energy of that short drop caused it to chip, deformed it just enough that it would catch on the release mechanism, and now I can no longer use this card in my cameras. Does that mean that I'm going to sell my Z6 now because it only has the one card slot and it's using XQD cards? No, absolutely not. But it does mean that I'm going to be a little bit more aware about the true durability of these cards and the fact that they do have some weak points. I'm not really going to invest in a whole bunch of these cards right now, but I am going to put it on my list for the future to add additional cards so that I have backups, so that if something like this were to happen again, it doesn't slow me down and I can just keep rolling. So just wanted to kind of share that real quick, my story of an XQD card failure and how it can happen, how it might affect you as a professional or as an amateur. So next thing I'm going to do is get myself a replacement XQD card, pop it in my camera, and go take pictures and have fun doing it. Thanks.